This covers the very basic ideas of rafter layout for those who aren't already familiar. So I've got a approximate mock-up, partial mock-up here, and I'll put the plywood back on the roof for a second. So there's a few really common scenarios that you'll run into when laying out rafters. And I thought I would just talk about the basics of a common way that rafters are laid out. So frequently, at least the way I was taught, you start once you've got your top plates in place, right? The walls are up. You hook your tape on the top of this wall here, and you would pull towards that valley over there, and you would mark to and go, or every 2 feet you would make a mark, and then on the side of the mark that's closer to the valley you would make a little X, and that lets you know which side of the line the common rafters are going to land on. And if you're hooking at this corner, what that means is that these are going to be nicely on 2 foot on center, but by the time you get to the valley over here, something weird might be happening, depending on how long the wall is. And so you might do the same thing over here. You would pull from the corner and you'd go 2 foot on center, and then this one might do something else that's not quite so pretty at the corner. And frequently the ugliness gets hid over here near the valley rafter. And so you can see that over here you usually have a nice even look, and I was taught that these are called flyers. They aren't doing a whole lot structurally, but according to Mr. Lundgren, if you step on one of these while you're framing, you'll fly off the roof. And flying is not allowed on the job, so you're fired, and when you land on the ground, you're trespassing. So in order to think about another possible way to solve this, let me show you a different possibility. I've got these on the side. Now I've swapped these ones that are off to the side here, and you can see that what I did was I made it so that these are nice and symmetrical on that valley rafter right there. But in order to do that, you'll notice that from here to here looks like a different distance than the rest of these. What you could do, if it was important to you to make that look pretty, you could cause the unusual span from here to here, which is different than 2 feet. You could set that up so that that's right here in the middle somewhere. It's going to mess up layout a little bit, and it's not as common, but you could do something like that if for some reason that corner was important, at least visually from the underside. Now another thing very commonly happens when you have a hip on either end. So you might pull to and go here and pull to and go here, and you can end up, if it's not a nice perfect even 2 foot spacing, you can end up with another unusual situation. So you could solve it a couple different ways. One way is you just leave the larger than usual gap in the middle, and depending on how much bigger that is than 2 feet, you'll have some unusual framing with this sheathing. Or you might put one of these common rafters right down the middle. Depending on how big that space is, it might look nicer one way or the other. So that's the real basics of rafter layout on a top plate.